not used to people actually responding. That's fantastic. Yeah. So, that's it. These are our leaders. Okay, so we decided to do it out here. We have lots of people out for various reasons, and it was already set up in here, so we thought, well, we'll just do this in here today, and that's good. So we get to have constant access to food and the bathrooms and all that good stuff. So what I want to do is pray and then tell you kind of an agenda for today. It's going to be different than the way that we've done this in the past, and so we'll give you kind of an outline here as we get into it. But let me pray and get us going. God, we thank you for today. Thank you for a gorgeous day. We get to come together and just enjoy this time of friendship, of family, of fellow walkers on this path of discipleship and leadership. And I pray that you always help us to see where you're going and where you want us to go. To lead us, Father, to the places that will put us in a position to tell people good news about you, that they might find hope and joy and encouragement, strength in you, and that you help us to not grow weary in doing good. There's so much to do and so much at hand that sometimes it's just hard to keep up. But we pray for energy and strength, for balance in our families, in our lives here. And I pray that you help us to lead well. I know that often as leaders we duplicate ourselves. So help us to represent you well so that others will see you and not be distracted by us. And so God, we pray today as we begin this journey of the morning together, that you give wisdom and direction in what we say and in what all of us think. And we just pray that you, again, show us where you need us to go and how to function and how to do the things that are necessary, not to be busy, but to lead others to you and to help them to grow and mature so that one day we can present each one mature in Christ and that we will hear, well done, good and faithful servant. So God, we praise you for this. We praise you for our time. It's in Jesus' name that we pray. Okay, so while Kirk turns off the radio, I didn't even know it was on until we got quiet there. So what we're going to do today is we're almost done with this Leadership Academy. We've got really one more to do after this, and we'll explain more about that later. It's going to be very specific types of leadership, and but today is really bringing it to a place in the things that we've talked about, bringing all of it together where we actually start to put it in motion. One of the things we've done over the last couple of weeks has been to invite people to sign up to serve in various places. Tried to make the case that this is a normal part of discipleship, that a disciple serves in some way, that each one has been gifted with spiritual gifts and talents, those that believe, so that they can serve in the body. And so we want to continue to give people an opportunity to sign in. We decided not to have a formal ministry fair. Instead, we decided to try a virtual ministry fair. And so far, so good. I think it's working. People are beginning to get those sheets and fill them out, and it's kind of trickling in, and that's a good thing. And we'll continue to do that. And so that relieved a lot of burden, I think, from some of you that were going to have to stand at the table. I will also say that part of what, where we are is that when you guys here several weeks ago filled out sheets on kind of what you wanted to do and areas to lead, it took us way longer to go through those than we expected. It was an intense exercise, really, to go through and try and tie it all together and figure out who serves where and how does this work and how do we combine all these different factors in. And it was really challenging, really was. But we spent a lot of time praying through it and chewing on it, and we spent time in front of the whiteboard. In fact, when you walked in at one point, we had every ministry that goes on across the whiteboard and every name in different places and scratched out and arrows. Even for people that enjoy whiteboards, it was intense. Yes. It kind of made me feel anxious when I would walk in the office and look at it. Yep. I'd have to look away. It was overwhelming. And so it really was really challenging. It really was. to figure it out, but I think God continued to lead that way. Now, lots of you have heard from me on different things, but not everybody. Truth is, I didn't have time to get to everybody by the time we finalized certain things, and so some of you have heard ideas on where we would like for you to help serve, but not everybody, again. And so we'll have to talk through that some today. And so primarily what we want to do today is spend a little bit of time talking about how do you develop a ministry structure. And I want to take probably about a half an hour and just go through it. I've got something to hand out to you that will show you what it looks like to begin developing the processes of a ministry. And this will be helpful for everybody. Now, not everybody, we kind of said this at the beginning of our Leadership Academy a year ago when we began, almost a year ago. We said that not everybody was going to necessarily want to serve in formal ministry, nor would everybody serve in formal ministry. For some of you, it would be better leaders in your homes and better leaders at work and all that, and that's going to be true here also. But we have lots of opportunities for you to work and to serve. The other thing is some of you are serving in lots of different ways already, just as a servant, and part of what we determined was not to overwhelm you with having to lead something on top of the 13 other things you already do. And so, some of that flows in and out. But this little exercise will be important for everybody because it will help you begin to organize your thoughts. You could actually take this and turn it around if you're a business person, and you could use this in a business situation or scenario. That's where a lot of this came out of from me as I began to develop this. These are the kinds of things that we did in high-level business meetings where you were trying to plan out business models, and you would do some of these exercises. They really work. They really do if you take the time and the energy to work through it. And so we're going to talk about that today for just a little bit. And then we want to talk a little bit about spiritual warfare just for a few minutes, because the truth is, as we begin a new season of ministry and working that way, the devil continues to try and mess people up and beat people up. And so we want to talk about that a little bit too. And so that's kind of the outline. So the idea right now is we're going to talk for about an hour, and then we're going to be done. And what we're going to try and do is, if possible, try and group some of you together in certain areas of ministry and begin working on some of this stuff as a lab. Now, the truth is we have a lot of people that are gone, and it's going to be hard to work on that if some of the people in your group are gone. And so we're going to have to look around and kind of do the best that we can. Part of that then is going to be Kirk and I will kind of go off to the side or maybe the next room. And if we didn't get a chance to talk to you either through text or on the phone this week about different things, then come see us and we'll kind of go through where we are so we can get you off in the right direction. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So the first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about 3 services. This has nothing to do with our training other than to make sure that from a leadership perspective, you know kind of where we are. So I've had several people ask me, if we're going to continue with the 3 services since the 3rd service is light. I thought I explained this to people, but I must not have. And so let me explain it to you, and I'll try and explain it again. By the way, our October CDs, and hopefully you actually listened to that. I'm not going to ask if you did, but hopefully you listened to the September one. We're going to try and make that a monthly thing. And by the way, we've got a couple guys that are putting labels on things. We might need someone else to help at some point when we're done, just to make sure that's all finished for tomorrow, so we can hand out CDs. But we need to hand CDs out to families as they go out the door tomorrow. And hopefully they'll put them in their car and they'll get all. And I talk about what I'm about to say to you. I talk about this on the CD, and that's important. But I want to explain the 3 services to you. So, let me ask it this way. Why do you think we went to 3 services?
So we can make room for those that are coming.
So we can make room for those that are coming. If you were here for a while before we went to 3 services, there really wasn't room. It was, that second service was, in some cases, 90% capacity. First service was getting up there and, to 80%. The standard rule in church world is you cannot grow beyond 80% of your capacity. So if you have, if you have a number of seats in the room, that means 80% of them at the most can be full, because people don't want to always sit right next to somebody else. That's the idea. And so I don't think that's true. I think the answer is closer to 70%. I think when you get to about 70% capacity, people start to freak out a little bit, and they don't want to sit next to people, and they don't want to walk into a room that's absolutely completely full. And that is affirmed by things that I hear from people, guests, and I've heard it several times in the last couple of months, that the only criticism was there was no room in the lobby, there was no room in the auditorium, and it was uncomfortable to find a place to sit.
Pretty obvious something's going on, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. It wasn't like a deal killer for a lot of people, but it was like, wow, it's really busy here. And so, so we went to 3 services to make room, but not just in the lobby, not just in the worship area, but also in classrooms. Because the classrooms were like 112% capacity in some cases. It was just, too many children in those rooms. So we went to the 3rd service to try and make some space. And so part of what I tried to say as we got ready for that was we have to get comfortable with it not being a full room. You're not going to immediately go from 2 to 3 services and have every service full, nor do we want it to be. Because if every service is full, what does that mean? You're ready for a 4th service. And then Spencer wants to throw up. So, not really, I'm not complaining. I display it. No, I didn't do that. When it's time, it's all good. And so, so the idea is that we have to get comfortable with a service being 35% full. And that's okay. Because we're creating space. And so I think what's happened is some people have seen that 3rd service at 35% capacity and gone, ooh, are we going to keep the 3rd service? Absolutely. We have to. Because it's doing what it was supposed to do. Absolutely. It's a low pressure release valve. It's opening up the classrooms a little more, which is really good. And although we thought that it would be harder to find more teachers, I think the teachers are actually appreciating a little bit of rest in that because it's not so crazy. Am I right, Natalie? Yeah, and so that's actually going really smooth, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And so, yes, we'll continue with the 3 services. Now, you probably saw it some this week that I put out there, hey, if you can, consider coming to 1st or 3rd. Because 2nd service is getting your capacity again. Now, the old adage in the church life world is your initial service will always be your biggest one. And so our initial service was 10:30. I think most people just went, well, 10 o'clock is close enough for the 1st service. And so most people are still coming to that one. And I get that. But, we're going to try to spread that a little bit so 2nd service does have room for people. Because right now, it depends on Sunday. It's iffy whether there's going to be room. And so hopefully we can move some people to 3rd service and create a little more space and a little balance as we continue to grow so that we don't outgrow one service and then have 35% in another. It'd be nice if everybody would kind of filter into the other classes. So that's what we're trying to do. So it's doing exactly what it was supposed to do. It is successful in that sense because it's creating some space and a little pressure release valve. So don't get discouraged. And if someone says something to you about it, my hope would be you as a leader would help overcome that objection by saying, no, this is exactly what it's supposed to be. It's okay that it's a lighter service. If we have 100 people in there, that's 100 people that aren't trying to cram into the other 2 services. Make sense? And so it's all good. Even if there's 50 people in there, it still accomplishes it to a certain degree. It creates a little space for other people to come. And then I'm doing my best to try and get to where I can stop preaching so long so we can get this traffic out and the next traffic in. And it's going to take me some practice. Amen. It just takes practice. I'm working on it. I'm working hard. Trying, doing my best. The truth is, I am built as an hour-long preacher. And so it doesn't work as well in this world that we live in. And so that's what makes sense to me when I start creating things. So it's hard. It is hard for me. And
I get Brad to hook up some electrical prods to your chair.
No, I don't think I need to talk faster. I think lately I've been overcoming the length of time with how fast I talk. So, yeah. At least that's what Jennifer says. So.
Does anybody have any questions about 3 services or just things they've heard? I just want to kind of get that out there and let's talk about it before we move on. Anyone?
I love it. Is it true that 3rd service they actually get larger communion cups?
They do. And real wine.
And real wine.
That's a way to increase third service. Right, that rumor just happened a little bit.
Fresh bread.
Yeah.
Foot massages.
By me. That's a good idea. Write that down. Real wine, third service.
I was going to say foot massages right now.
I'm thinking real wine. Real wine, third service.
You know, honestly, third service reminds me of how first service started out, and then look at how full it is. Because when we first started, adding that first service, I guess the second first service.
Right.
The same thing happened. It was light, and the same questions were happening. Should we be doing this? Are we wasting our time? And now look at how it's grown. So to me, I just think that we've already seen it happen. We've seen God have people show up at that time when we made room.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not worried about it at all. I think it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Now, when I stand up on stage, is it more enjoyable to look out at 300 people? Yeah. But part of that is just retraining the way that we think. Because in me, what I want to say is, okay, everybody, get up and come up to the front so I can see you. Of course, most people are sitting where they want to sit because that's comfortable for them. They want to scooch a little bit and they don't want to sit right next to everybody else, and that's okay. So that's my hang up, not their hang up. Most people are coming on that third service are thrilled that it is not hectic and crazy.
Yeah.
So it's okay.
You just have to remember we're the ones that probably struggle with the most.
Right.
So and I think part of that message was just be the positive influencers of moving forward with that. Message that in a positive way as people seem to be struggling with that. It's just important because we're going to see that for a while. We're going to be a season where it'll ebb and flow, and we have seen it over 3 weeks change. First week we were really full first service, and we've had some people that have been visiting and have not been back for a couple of weeks, and it will just happen. We'll just have to see where that season goes and how it looks.
Yep.
I'd like you to talk about this community group launch and just talk through that a little bit.
So community group launch, I think it was very successful this past Wednesday. It was a very busy week trying to get ready to pull that all off. A couple things that we've learned in all of that we don't have a whole lot of young professionals that don't have kids and aren't married. We don't have a lot of those around. We don't have a lot of young marrieds without children. We just don't have a lot of them. We have a lot of people that have small kids and big kids. That's where our demographic absolutely lies primarily. Although Jackie's group, which is the Season with Salt, it was a big group and they did really well too and had lots of interest in that. But as far as that college age into early 20s, we just don't have them. There's very few of them. And so that says a couple things. One is that should we just give up on that age group, or do we refocus our efforts on how do we grab those people? We need to do that and figure that out, and we're going to work on that. But as far as the community groups as a whole, very successful. I really like the idea of meeting in the community and meeting in different places. I think that was really cool and had lots of participation, which is awesome. And so hopefully what will happen is just over the season, which is October, November, those will continue to grow, continue to try and get involved and draw people in. And then we'll take December off, and then we'll reset and we'll hit it again in January. We might tweak a few things here and there. And that's going to be one of the things that's different about the community groups and life groups is that we're going to have hard stops at times. And that will give us the freedom to trade out spaces. It'll give us the opportunity to even trade out teachers if we need to from time to time. If someone needs a break, we can do that, and we'll work through all that. And so this is great. It's going to give us a little time of intense study, which is really what these are for, and to really make sure that we're teaching the Bible. We're not doing DVD-driven studies and things like that. We're actually going to teach and shepherd out of those groups. And so that's really good too. I'm really happy with how it is. I've had tons of good feedback from people that went to these and they're just totally excited about it. What kind of feedback have you gotten, or what kind of feedback do you have?
Thanks for watching my kid.
Yeah, that's good.
Thanks for watching my kids. Mosaic group was good. We had a lot of new people to the church
Yep.
came to that. I'm sure it's probably true across the board. But,
Yeah.
And just we got to hear some good things from them about how they felt about the church, and it was fun to hear that.
It was fun.
Because it was like they are drawn in the same way that we were drawn in 2.5 years ago. We still have that same DNA, that love, and it was fun to hear it.
Well, I think, and what Dixie's saying is talking about these new folks that were in the Mosaic group, and it kind of played to the attractional message on why we're a attractional church. It was all to do about how they felt when they walked in the building.
Yeah.
And nothing about anything else, but they just had a connection immediately, just by the way we greet them at the door and just the things that we do. And that was really affirming. It was really nice to hear.
Because it is the same, Brad said, because it's the exact same thing that happened 2.5 years ago. Which means that we're not just, this is how we plan on doing this week, but that's really our DNA, and that's really how, it's just a real, genuine thing. So
good.
People see that and love it.
Yeah, one of the things that we have to, as we continue to grow older as a church, that doesn't mean you and growing more gray hair, just as the church matures, because again, it's only a 3-year-old church, which is still a baby church. But as we get into year 5 through 7 and on and on and on, making sure that the DNA of what God has created here continues. That usually doesn't happen, I'll tell you. Most of the time, churches that start off well, they become more inside focused as they get older, and especially in church plants, they become more focused on themselves, and they lose that we're here to, take over the community and serve people and love them and see lost people saved, and become more about let's do this for us and let's not really invite them because those people stink and cause weird problems and all that. Let's just do our own thing and become a holy huddle. That's what happens a lot in churches, is even a great church, as they grow older, they tend to do that and become more internally focused. And so part of why you're here, and part of why we've invested the time that we have and spent time talking about, the first few sessions, it was all about who we are, our DNA and all that. It's because we want to make sure that the DNA doesn't only exist in us. It has to exist in you, because that's the way to safeguard that and make sure that it continues and continues on for a long time. It's really important.
We saw exponential growth in Awana, didn't we, guys? More kids are coming because of those community groups, and so if that was in high school, we wouldn't need more kids, and the parents wouldn't have, absolutely no reason not to.
Hang on. I'm not going to be able to hear you. I'm sorry, guys. I can't hear. Can you say the last part again?
Right, I just think it's important that we recognize that we've eliminated an objection to not participating in the community groups by having one, and then vice versa. Now our kids can be, taught the Bible. So we saw, Travis, how many more kids? In our classroom alone, it was like 8 or 9 more kids in one class last week.
Yeah, we had 16 more sign up on Wednesday.
Wow.
Awesome.
And how many crash out?
That's
All
good.
these babies going ahead.
Okay. What else? Any other feedback on community groups before we... Any concerns or questions about it? Okay.
So I just want to say, again, positive influence. It's a lot of activity on Wednesday in the parking lot, in this building. It's a blessing that we're able to have, we're using the space as best as we can. And at full capacity, because it is chaotic here, and we got 200 plus kids in the building on a Wednesday night, and then parents dropping off, and then all the other people that are leading and volunteering and working. Just love each other harder on Wednesday nights, because it's tough. Seriously, that's probably the best way to think about it. Love each other harder, because what you're doing is you're putting together an emotional cocktail. Right? Because you've got movement and chaos and people, and everything's trying to flow and work, and we are absolutely using the maximum capacity this space has to offer on a Wednesday night. And there will be a season where we're probably over. Let's just say we're over capacity for what we should be doing.
We need more space.
But again, that's a season. That'll change. God has already planned all this out. We just don't know what it all looks like yet. We'll get there. Just love each other a little harder on Wednesday nights. That'll be our new slogan.
Yeah.
Love each other a little harder. So, good stuff. Yep. So I wanted to talk a little bit and just share a little bit. This is the spiritual warfare section of today. I'm going to spend a lot of time here, but I do want to get any thoughts that you guys have and feedback. I want to be very transparent and just tell you that this has been a really intense attack season for me personally, for Jenny Lee and I in our household. For pastoral team. I mean, this has been very intense, and it's actually one of those times, and I've told some of you this, I'm in territory that I haven't seen before, which I've been blessed in a lot of ways, and God has taught me a lot of things, and there's been a lot of ways that we kind of know what spiritual warfare looks like for us and our family, and we kind of have a way, okay, we know what this is, and we deal with it and move on. We've been in kind of a season where it's been a little new, and that can be intimidating. There'll be other people in the room that may want to share a little bit if they're seeing the same kind of thing. But this is what happens, and I know in a season where God is doing something, there's about to be breakthrough somewhere. Why? He has to stall it. The enemy's got to come and try to put division in and try to keep things from moving forward. I mean, all of these things, I think, are true. And it's easy, I think, for him to try to work on that early on as he kind of senses that something is moving and really come after us. I call this a triple threat season. Here's why I call it a triple threat. Because just in life, and especially in the fall, everybody seems to be busy. Is that true? Does everybody feel like they're really super busy? Maybe even busier than they've been all year long? The fall kind of has this idea. There's some families have sports going on. Some people have more longer work schedules. There's just busyness going on just in general. So physically, we may be a little more drained than we have been. It's towards the end of the year. Our batteries are getting lower. We kind of, we've gone through the summer. We're back, focusing on school and all those things that happen. So we may physically be a little more depleted than we have been. Mentally too, as we go through, and you're part of this leadership group, there's a lot of change going on. We're introducing a lot of new stuff. And you talk about 3 services, and you talk about community groups and affinity groups, and getting connected and launching ministries in a more formalized, structured way. There's mental capacity that has to go into that. We're asking you, and we'll talk about some of these things, to really think through these things. We're changing the way our Reliant Kids is working. We're doing enhancing remix. We're looking at all of these things, and it causes us to mentally process more than we have before. So there's 2 areas. And then the third is obviously spiritual. As we are so busy and we're taxed mentally, then we may not spend as much time with God trying to get replenished and refueled. And so if you're in depletion in all 3 of those areas, well, the enemy looks at that and goes, oh, this is awesome, because I can really come in and cause some damage. And so usually if you think about it in the course of a year, if you're depleted in one area, you can usually just kind of, put your, I won't say it that way. You can usually overcome. I was going to use a cliche that was probably not so appropriate. You can imagine. You can usually just kind of suck it up and overcome when you're depleted in one area. When you start to get stacked, and these things stack, and I call this, spiritual warfare stacking, that there's something is you can usually handle if it's one thing, but when it starts to pile on, it gets heavier and heavier, and you get to the point where it's like, well, I'm feeling, like I'm going to break. And so, anybody felt any of that going on? Any spiritual warfare? Any attacks? Okay. Well, and talking about this is important, because as we do this, as we actually say, here we go, ministry, leading ministries. We are paying a target on your back, and we talked about that early on. You're accepting a target on your back. And I know I say that, but I want to be very honest with you. There will be something that is probably going to be a little bit new. That'll be a trial or a test for you. There'll be a temptation. There'll be something that'll come up. You'll kind of go, where'd that come from? You know where it's coming from. Okay? I think that the very thing, and there's so many verses if you go in, I don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time. John 8:44 talks about the devil being a murderer and a liar. And the very first thing that we talk about is assume positive intent. We've been saying that all along, and as we've gone through just about every session, we said, well, you got to remember API. You have to remember API. Why? Because if he's a liar and he wants to spread lies, then that'll happen. It'll happen out on the kind of fringe areas of here, and they'll be like, well, even like addressing 3 services. You're trying to say, well, we shouldn't be doing this, we shouldn't be doing this format, we shouldn't do this. That can happen, and we can have all these things that are going on. Now, the thing that I think about from a liar standpoint is if you can't see this in the world, truth matters right now. Truth is a battleground in itself right now, everywhere you look. Even if you look at, what is an extreme terrorist group, how does a religion that cuts off heads, a peaceful religion, these kind of things are battlegrounds of truth, and they're everywhere. They're in the education system, they're all over society, and so one of the things that I think it's clear that God's been leading us to, which is you have to teach truth and you have to have good teaching. Why? Because lies are being spread around everywhere. And so when we hear things like we have to teach well, that's why community groups are in the format they are, and we're not doing video studies in those. We're going to dive into biblical studies in there because truth is important. And so that assumed positive intent is part of this spiritual warfare strategy 101, which just says don't make agreements with things that are not true. Don't make agreements as you hear these whispers about things that may seem like they look like something but are not. And here's what we've had in our experience lately. Anytime we've had this kind of idea that someone had a perception that was wrong, and we've asked to sit down with them, guess what happened? We got on the same page and everything was great. But this is what tends to happen is you'll hear something or see something, or somebody out on the fringe will be confused about something, and they don't really address it. They kind of talk about it out over here. And I'm saying this to you because you have to be the ones that help address this when it's out over here, because as we get to 500 to 600, there are going to be people talking out here. In fact, Spencer had a post yesterday about people saying, they didn't feel like anybody was checking on them. They were gone for a couple of weeks, and nobody checked on them. And Spencer's like, well, that's baloney, because I can prove that I checked on them here, here, and here, right? If there's a problem going on anywhere, the easiest thing to do is just come straight forward and go, I'm seeing this and I'm troubled by it, can we talk about it? Every time we've done that, it's been successful. Every time. Yet people still go and don't do it. Right? So, you agree to that, right?
Well, yeah, and I think it's a biblical thing. When you have a conflict with somebody, you need to go to them.
Yep.
You shine that light in that place, and it solves the problem almost always.
Yep. So, in that season, that disagreement, and then just, agreements for yourself. I should just give up, this is too hard, this is too intense, I won't be able to do this, I can't accomplish this. And you start to go, yeah, that's probably right. I hear that right now. I'll just be honest with you, I hear it right now. You're so busy, you're busier than you ever have been in your life, why would you want to do this? You could go off and make more money by doing blah, 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 blah. Seriously. I know where that comes from. That is not from me. My heart is so focused on serving God's kingdom, but I know when I hear that, where that's coming from. So I immediately have to make sure that I'm not trying to grab into agreement with that. But that's the way the enemy works. It's not in some big overt way. Most of the time he's trying to whisper in your ear to think a different way, or to go your own way, or to give up and do something else. Give up is a big message right now. Here's what I'm hearing: give up. Not give up in ministry, give up marriage, right? It's too hard, it's too much work. It'd be better if you go this. I'm hearing that in a lot of places. Give up. You don't want this anymore. This idea of I'm done. I hear that word a lot too. I'm done. I'm done. I'm out. It's over. The enemy wants to get you there. So the last thing I'll say is, that's something obviously you can do. The other things are shine the light in dark places. You have people you can process stuff with. You can have people that will pray for you. If there are things that, even in this group here in the Leadership Academy, we still have that Facebook page that, we can use that to post prayers for this group, especially that is about to jump in to ministry in a bigger way than we've done ever in the life of this church. Ever in the life of this church. It's been 3 years in the making to build ministry teams in the fashion that we're doing right now. Which means a lot of things. This is another safety valve for, just like 3 services, the work to really get done in this mission station we call Renew starts really right here. You have to think about that. Because for the most part, for most of the journey, just about 2 years, the only person truly on staff was this guy right here, right? And then everybody else was in here volunteering time. And then so now we increase that. Well, now we get to have more impact as we organize ministries and have a focus and a plan, and we start to draw these people that are wanting to connect, and they're putting their names in a box saying, I want to jump in and serve. So we start to have an impact, and it starts to look like this. And what happens there? This is what happens. We talk about this kind of as a wolf pack. In a wolf pack, if you're left outside alone in a wolf pack, you're in danger of dying. That's why wolves work in together. All the people that are out in the fringes are the people that are in danger of hearing lies and going away and not being here to get closer to God. All of those people out in that fringe area, the new 200 people that nobody knows really well. But when you start doing community groups and when you start doing ministry teams and people can jump in and get involved, now they're in the know and you know what to say, right? Because that's what Leadership Academy was all about. This is why we did this. This was not some kind of formal, that it's great because we want to give up a Saturday because we don't have anything better to do than to get a bunch of people in a room and drink coffee and eat a bunch of fattening pastries. This was it. I mean, this was the whole purpose. Everybody in this room has heard the same message, is on the same page, has the ability to go out and speak the truth about what we're here to do to 200, 300, 400 more people that are coming to remit. That's it. And so why wouldn't the devil want to destroy that before it even starts? It's pretty simple. So I just wanted to tell you, everybody should be aware of it if you're not already, and we have to work through it together. So if there are things where it does seem stressful and you're hearing that you should give up or it's too much or I don't like the way this is going, you have to come and we got to talk about it. We have to. It'll work every time. Even if we disagree, at least there'll be truth laid out and there'll be no this, that, or other. Have to. Anyone add? Nope. All right.
All right, so we're going to walk into the last part of today in a formal teaching type model. And I think part of what Kirk said there at the end is important for you to hear. Because I think it's along the way sometimes when we start talking about, giving some formal structure to ministries, that's probably a new thing for everybody, or at least almost everybody in this room. If you've been a part of a church in the past, you probably walked into a church that had formal ministry models created, and you just walked into something that existed. I'm guessing that's true. Very few times have you probably had to walk into something from scratch and had to create it from scratch. Am I right? Just with body language, am I correct in that thinking? And so, this is part of that challenge, and what makes us unique, at least one of the things that makes us unique, is that we are not the size of a new church. We are the size of a fairly large church, especially for the size of community that we're in. Yet we don't have a lot of the formal structure because it's hard to create it until you create leaders that can create it. Because it would be impossible to step back and create 30 different fully functional ministries that are well thought out and planned if it was just one or two people trying to create it. And so it just continues to be one of those very unique things about our story. By the way, tomorrow, as far as I can tell at the moment, the way the sermon will start is... What? Sorry. As far as I'm concerned, at the moment, the way that the sermon will start tomorrow is that the average lifespan of a church is 80 years. That's the average lifespan of a church, which is interesting. If they make it through the 7th year, the average lifespan is 80 years. Most churches don't make it to year 3, and even fewer to 5 and fewer to 7. But once you get to 7, you're probably going to make it. But 80 years is the lifespan. And so part of the question then is going to be, so if that's true for Renew, it will outlive me. So what will the story be in 80 years or 77 years from now, if that holds true? It's the average, but that's tends to be the lifespan. What will the story of this place be? It's an important question. It's kind of an interesting thing to think about. It will outlive everybody in the room, probably. except for maybe the littlest ones that don't understand what's going on at the moment. But, kind of think about that. Isn't it interesting to think that some of our kids or grandkids will be the ones 80 years from now that will hopefully be in this room, not in this building probably. This building won't make it 80 years, I don't think. But, in a room together talking about their parents and their grandparents and the first leadership academy and trying to create ministry structures. I mean, think about that. Isn't that kind of interesting and unique to think about?
Yeah.
So we're in a very interesting season of life and always have been. It's never slowed down. And I joke about that sometimes, like, well, I can't wait to do this when things slow down. Well, it has never happened here. We continue to move and move and move, and that's good. There's an urgency of the gospel right now in our world, in case you haven't noticed that. And there may be a season where craziness happens on this soil in our world where people will wake up more and want more of God, and it is even more opportunity for all hands to be on deck. And so that has nothing to do with we just want to have more people in the building or any of that stuff. We want to see more people saved and in heaven and mature and grow in their faith. And one reason we want people to mature and grow in their faith is so they duplicate themselves, right? One of the most important reasons why someone can mature in their faith is so their neighbor, they can lead to Christ, not just me. Make sense? And that's what a mature believer can do in time. And that's what we're striving for, is to really create disciples that will make disciples. So we've got a lot of work to do. And it's hard. It's going to be challenging in every way because we're creating stuff from scratch. It's much easier to walk in when something's done. Now, the beautiful part about creating it from scratch is we get to create it the way we want to. That was one reason we decided to plant a church, was because we had a hard time finding a church with the right DNA. And what we felt like God was telling us was it's time to start one from scratch because it's the only way to get to the heart of what God intended for the church. Because churches get too caught up in doing their own thing and forget why they're a church. And so we've got a lot to do there. And part of what all this is about, honestly, and Leadership Academy and community groups and virtual ministry fairs, all of these things that we're doing is part of what we call our 750 plan, which means as we get ready to be at 750 people in a congregation coming on a consistent basis at church, everything changes. Going from 600 or a little less to 750, a lot changes here, and a lot has to. And then a lot changes from 750 to 1,000. And a lot changes at that point from 1,000 to 1,500. And can you imagine being twice the size we are and living with the infrastructure we have? It would be very challenging. It's challenging already. So we've got to create some ministry structure, and we need your help. And so what I need to do is have a couple people maybe help pass these out. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Don't read ahead. You're a sinner if you do. You're sinning against me if you read ahead. Don't read ahead. Hey, I've got an idea for you. If you are challenged by that, see this? Take a separate piece of paper and put it over the top so you can read along with me. The only part you should see is ministry, organization, and development strategy. Odds. Oh, yeah. Okay, let's bring it back together. All right, so you should be looking at the side that has a lot of writing on it as opposed to the side that has lots of blanks. Please do follow along with me. If I can get everybody together with me, please. All right, so MODS is a ministry organization and development strategy. Now, we actually have a PODS also. Some of you will end up seeing PODS. It is different than this. PODS are for projects, a specific project. Like if we were to do a Fall Fest, we would create a pod for it because it's a specific start time and end time. Whereas a ministry is something that really has no end time. It's something that will begin to function and continue on throughout time. Let me explain a couple things to you since you're cheating and reading ahead. So, sinners, stop it. So, listen, we're going to have some baptisms later, I'm just saying. See if we can get some of our leadership team saved. All right, so when it comes to these mods, one of the challenges in whether it's a business situation or a ministry situation, there are two things often. I'm going to wait till I got everybody. I'm sorry, this is really important. One of the most important things that you have to understand that will blow up a business or blow up a ministry, it's ego and execution. Ego means that when you think it's all about you, you don't see well what needs to really happen. This isn't about me, this isn't about you. It's really about what God wants to do. There can't be ego in this. The other side of it is execution, which means the inability to pull it off. There are lots of factors that can mess up your ability to pull something off, and we're going to talk about that. But those are the two main things that will sink a business, ego and execution, and it will sink a ministry also. The other thing that will mess up a ministry is when you begin to create a ministry structure to think that the structure we create today will still be relevant 2 years from now. It won't be. As we continue to grow numerically, every ministry structure we create will adapt and change and needs to be readdressed at least on a yearly basis, if not a quarterly basis for some of the ministries. And so some of the ministries that we create in here need to be constantly confronted with this method of organization and development. As new people come in, it's always a good time to literally pull this out and read through it and go, is this still relevant? Is there something else that we need to change? Because what the mods will do is it's going to be a way to organize your ministries in writing so that when someone new comes in, you can hand it to them and go, this is our ministry. This is what the men's ministry looks like. This is what the decorating ministry looks like. Or this is what whatever it is. This is what Camp Bradley ministry looks like. Here you go. It might be 3 pages, but it's going to be organized and structured similar to this in this process. Because what it forces you to do is ask hard questions. And asking the questions that are necessary for you to develop a ministry. And then again, it's going to continue to adapt and change over time. So let me just quickly go through this with you. Basically, the front side of this is an explanation of what all the sections are. And then the back side is how you're going to fill it out. Now, we will make this available. We'll upload this document in the ministry team Facebook page file. And so you can get it, save it, and print it out, or save it and type on it and then print it out. But this is going to be a work in progress. These aren't going to get done today. These are going to be things that we're going to just explain, and then if we have time and you want to and you have time to break up into groups and begin having dialogue about it and discussion about it and work through it. Let me also say that before you begin any ministry development structure, what is the very first thing you should do? Pray. We would want to pray our way through this entire thing. And maybe even before each section, stop and pray. And ask God for wisdom and direction in each thing. Because you do not want this to be out of your best idea in your flesh. You don't. You need to surrender that. Even if you've done this exact same ministry in another church, you've got to pray and ask God to show you what needs to be done and how it needs to be different. Because the truth is, just because you've done a ministry in another church may not mean that that's the same structure that God wants you to use here. Every circumstance is different. And so praying your way through it, constantly surrendering your best ideas, constantly surrendering your weaknesses and strengths, and asking God to show me what we need to do is key to all of them. Okay? So let's work through it real quick. So ministry name, description, that should be pretty easy, I think. but some of you, it might be hard to give a description. You could put men's ministry down, but what is the men's ministry? What is a description? Is it just we're ministering to guys? Come on, we can be a little more creative than that. And so how would you describe it? If someone said, what is your men's ministry all about? Explain it to me. This is how you describe it. This is what you would do here in the first section. How do you describe it? Now, do you describe it by the activities you do? Probably not necessarily the activities, because the activities could change. Like, I would not define the men's ministry as LMNO. LMNO is something the men's ministry does, but LMNO does not by itself define the men's ministry. The men's ministry description would be more in line with almost like a missional type statement of saying, the men's ministry is here to capture the hearts of men for Christ, to grow in Christ, to mature as believers, and to become servants as disciples, or something like that. Does that make sense? This would be a description of the men's ministry.
Well, that description will be what we put in the overall catalog of ministry. So as people come to a Connect table, they need to understand at least succinctly, what does it mean to be in part of this ministry? That's the description, is what you're creating. So they can read it and go, oh, okay. It shouldn't have a tremendous amount of questions. It should prompt them to have more questions. Not go, I don't understand.
Right. Now, like a resume, if you were to ever write a resume, your opening paragraph or whatever is usually kind of an overview of who you are. Sometimes it's easier to write that after you do everything else. And so the truth is, the description may not be the first thing that you write. It may be the last thing you write after you go through the exercise. Everybody with me on that? Even though it's right up front, it might be something you do at the very end. So ministry objectives and goals. Be smart. SMART is specific. Is the goal specific enough for clarity? So you need to, if we're saying these are the goals of the ministry, this is what we're really trying to accomplish, be specific. Be specific as possible. Use scripture wherever you can to describe it. Like if you were to say our goal is to present each one mature in Christ, where is that found in the Bible? Write it down. It's important. Be specific as you can. Measurable. Is there any way to measure the success of the goal? One of the most important things you can do in writing objective statements for your business or for this is to say, here's what we're really trying to accomplish, and it's measurable. We can see it happen. So if you were to say something like, at the conclusion of our Leadership Academy, people will know what to do with this, that, and whatever. Well, that's not really measurable. What's measurable is to say, at the conclusion of Leadership Academy, people will be able to explain what SMART means and apply it to a sample ministry scenario. Does that make sense? There's something totally different. What's measurable? Can you see how this lives out, and you can go, yep, check, they did that. Yes, they accomplished that task. And so like saying that they're mature in Christ, that may not be it. How would you define what maturity looks like? And then that was part of what's measurable. Is it attainable? So you could say, well, we want to create a men's ministry in the next year. That would be part of our measurable. And before 2016, we want to have a men's ministry of 900 men. Now, that may not be attainable because, now, I know some of you go, well, if God does it, yes, of course. But you have to use some sense in that of saying we want to grow a men's ministry of 35 to 900. Well, you better have an awesome plan, unless the day of Pentecost comes back around, and that, that could happen. So, and realistic, is the goal realistically written? Timely, is there a timeline associated with the goal to ensure completion date? And then basically I went through and gave some examples. Church goals should reveal the strategy and be written to help move the organization forward. Examples: increase weekly church volunteer participation by 10%, 100 to 110 by December 20, whatever. That's just an example. And when you see the example, it's showing things that are measurable, it's specific. Is 10% increase in volunteer participation attainable? Yes. Is it realistic? Is it timely? Well, December of what? If you said December of 2020, that would not be timely. But if you said December of 2014, you got 2 months, yeah, that's attainable. That kind of thing. Does that make sense, everybody? And so writing those objectives and goals that way. Circumstances. These are the who, what, when, where, why, and how of this example. And so who will do this? Who will do it in the ministry, or who's going to participate? Now, I didn't add all those little keywords. You have to use some sense in that. Who will be a part of it? Who will do it? What needs to be done? When is this going to be done? Where will it take place? We skipped why because the why is reflected in the objective. And how do we do it? What are the steps to get it done? And that will help you define the goal. The objectives and goal will probably be one of the places that, in circumstances, will be the most time consuming. But until you know what you're aiming at, you will not know if you hit it or not. Everybody with me? And so until you can clearly identify what the ministry looks like, what we're trying to accomplish, it's not going to help you. It's like when I sit down to write a sermon, I have to know at the end, what am I wanting to accomplish? What should I want people to say or to think? Or what is the response that we're looking for? Or what key learning is necessary? And then you start from the beginning and you work back to that. But you have to know where you're going with it. Okay? SWOT analysis. This is often written as a brainstorming list, not really a narrative. A SWOT analysis. How many in the room have heard of a SWOT analysis before? Okay, so not very many. This is a typical business organizational structure thing, but it works in ministry. It's analysis is a strategic planning tool that involves listing the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of a project. So strengths are things that a ministry or project plan does well, or advantages it has, such as dedicated volunteers. So part of what you would do after you come up with the objectives is you would then evaluate where are we right now. As it sits, what are the strengths that we have? So if we're, again, to go back to men's ministry, we would ask, what are the strengths that we have? That's internal. What are the internal good things that we have? And you could say things like, well, we have people that can teach. That's a strength. And so that's helpful. We have a space that we can meet in. That's a strength. Those are internal things that we can control. Those are our strengths. What are the weaknesses? These are on the inside. These are the things that a ministry plan does poorly or disadvantages that it has. And you could list whatever those weaknesses are within the church structure. And so, one of the weaknesses we have is we don't have available space other than a couple times a week because the building's busy all the time. That's going to be one of the weaknesses a lot of our ministries have, because the building is open constantly, and so finding adequate space might be one of 3 or 4 or 5 weaknesses. But again, internal things. What are our opportunities? So that's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. For some reason, those are out of order. I don't know why. Opportunities are external factors that the ministry or project might benefit from, such as an untapped market, available grant money, etc. So the S and the W are internal. The O and the T are external. What are the opportunities outside of what we're doing right now that could be beneficial that we could tap into? So give me an example. What's an opportunity? If we were creating this for the men's ministry, what would be an opportunity? It exists outside of the church structure. What's an opportunity out there that would help us accomplish the objectives and the goals of the men's ministry?
Like the bowling alley gave you time to go there, you guys had a place to go, they gave them something fun to do.
Okay.
And they can meet in a different atmosphere.
Okay, so one opportunity would be there are fun, engaging things for men to do outside of the building. Like could go bowling or shooting or,
Shooting, yeah.
kill things. Mean pig, yeah. Okay. Yes, another.
To spin that another way, it takes our men's group outside the walls to
Right.
into others.
Right, so that's an opportunity.
Inviting to bring those.
Another opportunity would be that there are men that live within 30 seconds of this building that are not engaged in a church. That's an opportunity. If we're talking about growing the men's ministry, well, an opportunity is there are guys that have never walked in this door that we could bring in. Does that make sense? Now, what's a threat? A threat is an external thing that could mess it up, that causes harm to the project. And so what would example be of a threat? And I gave some examples here. Threats are external factors that mess things up, like regulatory issues or sign ordinances or competitors or whatever. What is a threat that we can't specifically control inside the building that would mess us up if our objective is to numerically grow a men's ministry of guys that are involved and doing things in the community and service? What would an external threat be?
Facebook gossip.
Okay, so you could have Facebook and Facebook gossip and those kinds of things really is a real threat to the church as a whole. You get one person that's irritated about something and they can say things that are stupid and lies and all that, and you can't really control that very well. That would be a threat, absolutely. it's hard to come up with it, but these are important exercises. Why? Because as you figure out what are the potential threats, then how do we overcome those? Yeah, Ryan?
Couldn't threats also be internal too?
No, that would be a weakness. But I mean, you could have a threat that could affect us internally.
Yeah.
But a threat generally is something that you can't control. A threat is out there that exists that can have an internal effect, but you can't control it. You can't do anything about it. And so what you have to do is leverage your strengths and your opportunities so much so that they overshadow the threat as much as possible. You can never alleviate all threats. It's impossible.
How about like a women's conference the same week you planned your women's conference?
Yes, that would be a threat. An external threat would be something else. Like today, one of the threats that went on against Leadership Academy today were things like garage sales, the Walk for the Cure, those kinds of things. We can't control those, but they threaten the ability to have attendance at full capacity. Make sense? So it's an external factor we can't control.
And so what you're saying, they're not harmful threats, it's just.
Not necessarily
you need to be
harmful.
better with.
They're just things that make it harder to accomplish your goal, is all it is, that you can't control. It's an external factor. And so how do you leverage your opportunities and your strengths to minimize the threat? That's basically what you're trying to do. But you have to be aware of your threats.
Jeffrey brought it up the other night, Monday Night Football.
Monday Night Football, that would be one for sure for our Monday night thing, and it does affect it. It does affect it. When we go to a fourth service on Sunday night, someday, there will be threats because of sports again. Even on Sunday morning, one of the threats is, Pee Wee football and Little League sports and things like that cause an external threat that we have no control over. That until I'm president of the United States, and then I will make a dictum that no children's sports will be on Sunday morning. Executive order, right there, boom, first thing. I got a pen in the phone. But everybody's starting to understand what the threats are. Those are external threats. We can't control it, but how do we do everything we can with our strengths and our opportunities to minimize the threat as much as possible? Everybody with me on that? So like for instance, one of our strengths here would be we could adapt the time to do something because of a threat. Here's a great example. Recently, our 3-year anniversary. Friday night was actually going to be the night that we did our event here with live music and all that stuff. And then Saturday morning was going to be our 5K. Until we found out that Cabot had their first home game in this town on Friday night. So what did we do? We did not choose to compete. We just moved our thing to Saturday. There was an external threat that we determined we did not have enough strengths and opportunities to overcome that threat. So therefore, the strength that we had was the ability to move it. Everybody with me? So we all have to make those decisions along the way. For instance, I'm not sure that next year, 2015 Leadership Academy is going to be on Saturday morning. I think it's possible we might do it Sunday late afternoon or something like that. Why? Because we might be able to minimize some of the threats that we've dealt with on Saturday mornings constantly throughout the year. But we'll explore it and we'll look at it and see how that works. Everybody with me on strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? So the SWOT assimilation basically is where you pull it all together and you kind of articulate it in a couple sentences, 2 or 3 sentences that say, although we have these things, here's what this is. Like for instance, what I just said about the Friday night event for our 3-year anniversary. We had a threat that presented itself late in the game because we didn't know that was there. Once a threat presented itself, we utilized our strength of flexibility in scheduling to maneuver it and change the plan. Make sense? And so it's just kind of a narrative that explains it. So what's our strategy? Well, considering the SWOT, explain how you plan to accomplish the objectives from beginning to end without minutia. Now don't get caught up in how big that blank is. Your strategy might be a full page, but it needs to be written in such a way that people can understand it and go, yes, I get it. There is certain thing, hopefully you know what minutia means. Minutia means useless details that don't affect anything else. When I was a business guy, this was terrible of me, and I did it to Jennifer one time, and then I learned not to ever do it. And so people would come into my office constantly, and they'd knock on the doors, can I have a minute? All day long, every day. And so what I started saying was, you can have a minutia-free moment. That means don't give me all the crap and details. Just say what you need to say and leave. That was how I was a much different business guy than I am a pastor. And so it was like, no minutia. I don't want to hear all the stories. Tell me the conclusion and then get out of here because I've got other stuff to do. And so one day, Jennifer was telling me a story and I said something to the effect of, I don't have a lot of time. Can you take out the minutia? Oh, it was almost over right there. I only said that to Jennifer one time in 21 years. It'll never be said again. Your wives need to be able to explain life with minutia, and you've got to deal with it. It's okay. And ladies, the guys need to tell you minutia things like coloring was on that animal that they shot. They want to tell you that story, and you need to go, that's awesome. I don't care, but that's awesome. Minutia. So minutia-free means just because you can write a 10-page strategy does not make it better. A 10-page strategy is way worse than a one-page strategy.
Yes.
If you can't figure out how to explain strategy of a ministry in about a page, you need to start over because it's just too confusing. If by the time I finish reading the strategy, I can't remember where you started, it's useless. You got to be able to read it and articulate it like, yes, I get this, understand it. John?
So it's a twofold question, because how do you avoid overthinking and underthinking? Because there are a lot of people in here that are very detail oriented.
Right.
I'm not one of those. So for those people, how do you avoid overthinking? I don't need any comments.
This is a safe place, John. It's a safe place.
But also, how do you avoid underthinking it? Because, all right, so like we're doing the pods for staff and for stuff like that. You know, when we're writing the strategies out, you want to keep it clear and concise and to the point, but how do you avoid it not having enough detail or too much detail?
Right. I think a couple things. One is revisiting this often will help you. And so once you write it as a rough draft and then you live with this in ministry for a month or two and then come back to it, you'll go, you know what? Half of what I wrote is not realistic, and then adapt it in time. So I think living with the process and coming back to it constantly will help you massage it through and make sure. The other side of it is having a team approach to leadership, which is what we've been talking about, and having that OCD model where you have the organizer, the communicator, and developer. As they're developing these things together, that will help because you're going to have someone that loves the minutia and wants to give 80 points to a strategy because they can, whereas you have other people like me that are just like, look, I just need 3 points. Do this, this, and this, and we can go. I don't need 80 points.
Those people are awesome, the 80-point people. I'm saying love those people.
But you have to compromise. He and I, when we sit down and work on stuff, we have to compromise for this very reason. Because for me, if I know where we're going to end up, I can start. And that's not necessarily a better way. It's just how I'm wired. I'm not afraid to go, well, I know where we're going to end up. Let's just go. We'll do it tomorrow or right now. Or we'll be in a meeting and it's like, okay, I'll just take care of that right now.
So would you, like you said something about a rough draft, would you recommend for all of us writing a rough draft and then basically sleeping on it and then come back and revisit it again the next day before you present it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you need to do that. And I think you need to come back to it a week later, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, a month later, 3 months later, 6 months later, 9 months later, and continue to look at it and continue to adapt it and make it cleaner. Yeah.
That means I can't do it before it's due.
Right. You cannot do this 10 minutes before it's due.
Can I have a little color, John? I think what your question is. So I think everything Spencer said is right on. If you think about the strategy, it needs to be on one page.
Right.
There is detail that needs to be captured and talked about, but that's different purpose documents. That might be a training document.
See, that was my
You have to
question.
get down into the weeds, but it doesn't belong in a strategy document. The strategy document is like your overriding, controlling document. And then you may have training and procedures for somebody that's operating a cash register or for somebody that's taking an order or for something. But there's different purposes in different types of documents. And the strategy should be one page, clear, clean, and anybody that looks at it should know exactly what you're up to. And it doesn't matter how the cash register operates or how the food gets processed or those kinds of things.
So with that being said, though, I don't mean to derail us. I hope I'm not.
You're right.
Jim, but like, would that not fall into the overview, or is because it's more detailed than the overview is?
Well,
You have to decide whether it's material to your strategy or not. How the cash register operates is probably not material to your strategy in the well.
Now, and I agree with that too, and how I would piggyback on what she said was, in your strategy, it might be simple enough to say, we will train people how to use the cash register. And we'll do it within a measurable thing. We'll do it within 24 hours of them, coming in for the first time. We'll begin training. That's all you need to say in the strategy document. You can actually, in the strategy document, if you're going to be really, if this were a business mod, which it's not, but if it were, you would reference that to see, and parenthetically you'd say, see Appendix A. And Appendix A then is strategy training for that particular step of step 3 in your strategy form. There's a separate living document that is, now this is what you do with it. The strategy is still pretty high view, not into the nitty gritty necessarily most of the time. It's going to be, here are the main things, overview of the 10 things that this is our strategy in order of how to accomplish this task.
Because that was, like, when we wrote the one for Remix,
right?
That's what I thought that I wasn't putting enough in there. But essentially, it's like Steve was saying, it's just a reference point. That strategy is, hey, here's what we're going to do, and you go back and reference it, and you separate from there.
Right.
Because in a lot of areas, you get real detailed, and you have to get pretty detailed in wording and in the leads, and I'm pretty good at that. So you got to keep it light on your purpose or your mission.
Okay, Ryan.
Yeah, I actually do this for a living. Like, this is what we do at my job, and so. And Dr. Tony cares, but like this is like, he was saying there are going to be many documents and many brainstorming things that will come off of this. And so, like, thinking that you have to put everything in it, and then like you're saying with training documents, you can have like standard work that you create just for the training and for people to do. This will create your brainstorming effect. This will get your mind thinking, and then you'll be able to get into other things like other brainstorming events. So you're not pouring everything into this. This is to get your brain started to say this is where we want to go, and then you guys can create more documents, whatever you want to do from that.
Right. Yeah.
This reminds me of a resume. This is a snapshot of your ministry and the strategies that go with it. The other part, the minutiae, the details, is your face-to-face interview where you sit down and go, okay, I'm into this, now tell me what I'm going to do.
Yep.
So this is a one-page snapshot. This is who I am. Call me in for an interview. And then there you add in all the pieces.
Yep, I agree. The last one is resources needed. This is really important, guys. This is the one that most people get caught unaware. What are the resources you actually need to pull this off? Do you need a promotional video or marketing material? Do you need people? And you should need people. Now, people are addressed in circumstances like the who. One of the things that you've got to figure out, either in your resources needed or in the who's part of the circumstances, is who are the people we need to function and pull off this ministry. So again, if we were doing the men's ministry, who would we need in order to pull off the ministry? Just tell me. Let's brainstorm through it. Man. Now see, here's what's funny about me asking these questions. It's hard to know unless you have a clearly defined objective, isn't it? Unless you know exactly what we're shooting for, it's hard to even pull up this part. And so, again, that's the point of this document. All of it lives together, but part of what you would definitely need in a men's ministry as far as human resources is you need teachers, you need, you need cleanup people, you need setup people, you need marketing collateral, you need people that are inviting people in, you need first impressions. If you're doing it well, you've got people that are assigned to different tasks that are accomplishing these parts of that ministry. Because it's much harder to grow something when it's just one person and it lives with that one person. You need multiple people, which is why we've done the leadership training the way we've done it, where we've talked so much about personalities and talents and gifts and hardwiring and all that. Because it's for you, not just for yourself to know, but also as you recruit people to be a part of these things, you can find people with different skills and different hardwiring to pull off the different components of what you need. Like you would not want to recruit me to be your guy to keep a detailed spreadsheet of minutia. Amen. I hate it. I hate minutia. I do. But this guy thinks it's the blast. I don't know why. It's totally nerdball stuff. But but I want to be the communicator, or I want to be, as a high I, I'm a good developer. I want to go out and recruit people. Let's do this. It's going to be fun. We're going to go. Come on, come on, come on, come on. And I'll sit down and I'll text people for an hour like I did to get ready for Meet Dig this week. I thought, I've got 1 hour in my schedule and I'm going to text as many guys as I can to make sure they come. That's natural for me. It's a lot of time, but it's natural because I'm a developer. Not as much about that organizer thing. And so, based on what you find here and what you need to be purposeful saying, this person's going to be able to pull off these things. What does that mean? Because you don't want to grab a guy like me to be your organizer because it will make me burn out. Understand? I can pull it off. I have done it for years. I can build a great spreadsheet. They're ugly, but they work. Just like my documents that I write are always ugly. That's just not me to make them look pretty. Someone else can do that. But I can write this stuff all day long. Make sense? And so, in fact, we were joking about it years ago. I was president of a consulting company, and the CEO would always say, hey, go create me a document like this. And I would, and it would look just like this. And he would always go, that is the ugliest document. Can't you make things pretty? And I would go, no, I can't. Hire someone else that wants to make it look pretty. I can get it out of here onto there. You can hire someone to make it look pretty. That's not my job. I could spend 12 hours and try and make it look pretty, but my time's better spent somewhere else. Make sense? And so finding different people who are going to have different roles and different functionality in that is going to be important. Part of why we trained you the way we have this year. Okay? All right, so that's the mod. So basically, you can start right here and begin that process. Involves lots of prayer, involves lots of work through it. And so we're basically done with training today. That's about all we wanted to accomplish. This, though, guys, is huge. It's a huge thing. It's time consuming, but it's ultimately essentially important. Yeah, let me say one more thing. One thing about it is I started out by saying, if you've ever, probably most of you have never had to create something like this from scratch. Here's the truth. Most established churches don't have this either. Most of them don't. They have one person that a process lives with, and if that person gets hit by a bus, no one else knows what in the world's going on. Does that make sense? That's a very dangerous position for anybody to be in, whether it's business or even in your family. Like, if something happened to Jennifer, I'd be in dramatic trouble on how to pay my bills. I don't even know where she keeps them. As far as I know, they're all electronic. I don't know. It's been like 6 months since I've written a check. That kind of thing. So that's a problem. Does that make sense? And so you don't want something to live, but you can't have a process completely just live in the brain of somebody. It needs to come out. It needs to be documented so that we can, one, recruit people more effectively and develop more leaders. And if someone decided to, get hit by a bus, then that process lives beyond them. Everybody with me? So most churches don't have this kind of structure either. But based on where we are and how we're growing and the things that we need to do, in order to utilize our resources best, it's just something we've got to do. We've got to get to it. Okay.
What you're discussing here, I'm already seeing how I can apply to my work.
Yeah.
Because one of the tasks I have been assigned to recently is to create processes for how my job is done, because I got 19 years worth of stuff right here in my head.
Yep.
And we have nothing current on paper, and I've been really struggling with how to finalize it and draft it out. And just listen to something you're saying and other people, the resume style is really making sense for me to be able to apply this.
Yeah. And we have another document, and you're all welcome to see it. It's called PODS. It's not the same, but it's very similar, and it's for projects. And so if you guys want these for your business, take them. This is like Project Management 201, maybe 301 in some. It's pretty high level project management stuff. And unless you're trained how to do it, most people will never do it. Or unless they're forced to do it, they will never do it, that kind of thing. So
Because it does take some effort.
It does. It takes a lot of effort. Right?
When I struggle at my work, we do a lot of base stuff. Even in ministry, I was just thinking about standard work. I know that's it's a big word, but it's standard work, right? What you do on a daily basis. It's pretty simple, even in ministry, to have John and I need to, one thing we talked about is we need to have standard work for Wednesday, if one of us is not here or both of us are gone, where you can say, turn on the lights, do this. And I know that can be rudimentary, but having just that basic, this is what I do, can help people, understand what you're doing. So that's one key thing, just writing down what you do.
Yeah. And these documents will always be living documents. It's not, these don't become religion. They're living, breathing documents that will adapt and change in time, but it does give a structure, and it forces us to think through the hard things, like weaknesses and threats, and how we overcome those things. We have to do it. We do. It will help us, and in the beginning, it will be hard for us, but I promise you, if you do the process and you work it through, at the end, you'll be so satisfied with having the structure that's there, and it will make your life infinitely easier. And even the guys, we unleashed pods on the ministry staff last week, which is just the project side of this. And I think in the beginning it was like, oh, one more thing to do. But once we worked through it, it was like, oh wow, that really helped me think through all the things I need to think through that I hadn't thought through before. It's helpful. It's like when you're going to school to be a teacher and they force you to write lesson plans. You hate that stuff, but then when it's done, it's like, oh, that really did force me to go, what am I really trying to accomplish at the end? I mean, anything like that. John, did you have something to say? Okay. Kurt, you want to finish us? And
No,
then
Robin raised her hand first.
Oh, I didn't see you.
Do you want these, when we fill them out, on either the ministry or the pods for events for future reference?
For events would be pods. These are for overall ministries. And the biggest difference in a pod than a mod is that the pod has a due date, and it's going to be finished here. Therefore, the objectives are more measurable. Like by this date, these 4 things will have happened. Whereas in a ministry, it's not as measurable. Anytime you can measure it, that's good. But there's no end date for these. And so that's the difference. But yes, we would want to see those for future reference. We would want to see those for projects and things. And we can do that. But once you learn how to do this, the pod, it's basically the same structure. What else? Okay, that's right.
Back to the resource needed at the bottom of the page. Another moment of transparency, because we didn't address financial capital as needed, right? Because as you go through this process, you'll go, boy, would it be great if we had X amount of dollars to blah, 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 okay? So let's talk a little bit about just the reality of that. I think that is a good exercise, and you should do that as you plan for your ministry. We are going to be challenged in that, and as part of that, back to that conversation is, we're a 3-year-old church. We look like a 10, 20-year-old church. We do not have a big base of people that give to the biblical standard of giving. Now let me say that and circle back around here. There is truth to this, and you should know this, assuming positive intent, is that we have to do a better job of teaching that as we do overall in a bigger congregational type of thing. Here's why. We have a whole bunch of new Christians and seekers and people that have been unchurched and dechurched and have been confused about what all this means. But the truth is, disciples give according to what the Bible tells us how we're supposed to do that. And I'm not going to teach all of that right now, but it really is important. And so when we look at things like financial resources, we have to operate in the constraints we have. God will grow all this. We are confident in this. I want you to identify those, but we have to have a discussion about it. Can we do this? Can we not do this? How do we do it differently if we can't just say, well, it's in the church budget and you get $1,000 to go and do whatever, okay? There's some constraints there. There are going to be some weaknesses that she'll say, finances may be a problem here. We may not have to do everything we want to do because we're going to have to find a way to have money. So I do want to really say this, and it's true to my heart. I don't think you impose a teaching on biblical finances in order to fund a church. You do that because from a discipleship standpoint, what God says about this is absolutely true and is part of his prescription. And it's bigger than anything else that has to do with lights and staff and buildings and mortgages and all that kind of stuff that may happen. I honestly believe that to be true. You have to know my heart on this. I am the one that sits on top of all the spreadsheets and all the things that we do and all that, and I see it that way. I never look at it in a spreadsheet and go, boy, if we could just really ask people to give more every week, then we could do these things. My mind never goes there. It really doesn't. It goes to the fact that in the heart of things, we have to have people understand the truth of what God is really asking for, commanding, and teaching us on how to live a life as a disciple. That's the approach that you take to finances. Nope. Okay. So again, do that. Do the planning. Say this would be great if we could have this kind of budget, and let's talk through it. And then we'll work on it together. In some cases, we have to go. We got to find a way to bring that money in because this is right and good. And in some ways, we'll just kind of go, well, we may not be able to do it here, but we can do this. Let's just work through it, and I'll help.
We're super creative.
We are super creative.
And that is a strength. And so, if you came back to the SWAT and said, well, if a weakness is we don't have $10,000 to, send out slicky brochures to everybody in town, which we will never do,
We can do
even
it
if
for
we have
$10
money.
right here.
Yeah, but one of the strengths is we can do some good guerrilla marketing. We can do some door hangers and stuff, and we've got people we can get out and do, those kind of things. So part of that is that balance, especially as you begin to do that SWOT assimilation, is yes, this is a weakness, but we have strengths here, and we can overcome that weakness with this strategy and with this thing, okay? And so that's part of that. All right, so here's what we'd like for you to do. Again, I didn't get a chance to talk to everybody. And if I did talk to you either through text, because some of the groups I just texted you and said, here's kind of what we're trying to do. If you can start working on this together, this is what that meant. And we would begin working on it. What would be beneficial, probably, because again, we're missing about 20 people for various things. And so it's going to be hard to get everybody together in all the groups. If you look around and you see everybody that's in a group that you're going to be working in and helping to lead in a ministry scenario, then I would say at least get together for a few minutes, 5 minutes or whatever, and start planning a time that you can start this discussion. This will probably be one of these things where you need to do it over a couple periods of time. And you can assign some things, work through it together, begin to develop it together, and those kinds of things. If you have time and you want to hang out for an hour and work on stuff, you can do that also, okay? But if you're in multiple groups, because some of you are in multiple groups, because the way that we had to do it is some of our ministries are, others are here and there. They're what we would say are PRN, sort of as needed kind of things. And so some of you are in some of those as needed categories. And then again, a lot of you are already serving in lots of ways, and what we didn't necessarily, and again, I haven't talked to everybody, but some of you, we're not going to actually ask you to specifically lead a particular thing right now because you're already serving in a dramatic way in a couple of areas. And so that doesn't mean that's always going to be the case, but at least for this season. And so next year, or maybe next month, that could change also. Does that make sense? So don't get your feelings hurt, because that was, again, part of how we began this leadership structures. We said, what this is for is some of you are going to be leaders here, some of you are going to be better leaders in your home, or in your workplace, or your kids, and some of it's going to be you're going to lead in seasons. You may not lead constantly every season in the life of the church, and that's good for you if you're not. And so you may not have a specific ministry role right at this moment in leading, but that doesn't mean next month you won't. But let me give you some examples. For instance, one of the things that we've got is a soup kitchen and food services, and we have, I'll just give the example. The people that signed up for it, and by the way, everything you signed up for, we couldn't facilitate everyone in each thing, nor would you want to, because a lot of you signed up for like 5 different things. You don't want to lead 5 ministries. Amen. You do not.
No.
Many of you really don't want to lead one because you really just want to serve, and that's okay, at least for a season. But like the soup kitchen food services, Donna Clark, Kelly Schluter, and Terry Rutherford. Well, we don't have a soup kitchen right now, nor is our commercial kitchen built. But if they wanted to get together and begin talking about what would it look like, that would be fair. Wouldn't it be nice to create this and have it totally ready to go, so as soon as that kitchen gets built out, it's fully operational. Or maybe as they go through this, they decide, you know what, we can pull this off right now. We don't need a commercial kitchen. Okay, then show me how that works. Lay it out for me what it looks like. How are we going to pull it off? That's what this does. Everybody with me on that? Another one's like our community garden. It's not ready yet, but it could be. It depends on how this gets developed. Or another one on like medical services. We've got 4 different people that are all medical people. And at the moment, only one of them's in the room at the moment. Melissa, that's good. Congratulations, you're a resident medical person.
I've got a rash.
What do you think this is? I gotta show you this. Welcome to the life of a nurse at Renew, at least as far as Jennifer says. But, so if we're creating a medical services ministry at Renew, what's it look like? And we need to get those people in a room together and they can brainstorm and think about it and go, what do we want to do short term? What do we want to do long term? In order to get from short term to long term, what does that mean? Do we want to do anything in the short, those kinds of things. Those are the dialogues that have to begin taking place, okay? So some of you already have some assignments. We're done. I'm going to pray and you can go. This is lab time. If you want to leave, go ahead. But if we ask you to be a part of something and if you're in for that, try and find the people in the room and begin at least talking, maybe schedule time and get together. If we didn't talk to you, come see us at the table and we'll kind of walk through it and talk about it a little bit because I couldn't get it all done. Or some of you I tried to get a hold of and wasn't able to. And so we'll work through it. But the rest of the time is your time to either leave or to work on this stuff. But I guess the only last thing is due dates on these. I have a hard time assigning a hard due date on some of these, mainly because some of these aren't going to necessarily need to be super functional right now. Part of what we're really trying to do is it's October. It would be great if we were 100% fully functional by January in these areas. Does that make sense? So we've got the rest of the year to work through it. Now, some of that, then, does that mean that we should wait until January before we start doing anything? No. Many of these ministries are already functional. Many of these ministries need to get functional fast. Like we need a setup crew. We need a parking crew. And some of those kinds of things right now, even before this is developed. That means some of it we're just going to have to jump into and figure out along the way. But in doing it, it will help you develop this. Okay? And so I think part of it is open dialogue with us and you and talking about when this needs to be done. But let me say that these ministries should be fully functional, hopefully by January, which means these need to be in and processed through and worked through. Let us sit down with you and assuming positive intent and go, this is not a good objective for this ministry. Let's tweak it. Let's work through it together and chew on it a little bit. But then let it be a living document. You might come back to. We may go, good, try it that way, but 3 months from now, let's schedule time to sit down and go through it again and make sure that's actually working. And adapt it and change it and develop it and grow it, okay? Part of this then is we've got lots of people at Renew that have signed up to serve in different areas of ministry. Part of the messaging for them is going to be over the next 45 days or so, we're going to process through all that and we're going to actually give you guys lists of people that have signed up for some of those ministries and ask you to go make contact. Now when you make contact, you need to intelligently be able to speak to them, right? Like say, great, it looks like you signed up for this. Let me explain this to you. Here's our strategy. Here's our objectives and our goals. This is when this is going to start, and here's how it's going to look. Let's all get together and off we go. Make sense? We have a Connection Sunday coming up, October 19th, which is going to be different now that we have 3 services. It'll be 3:30 to 5:30 this time. We'll explore that time and see how that works. If you want to have a meeting at 3:30 on that Sunday to try and get together with other people and work on stuff, it's a good time to do it. There will be childcare here, and it will be a 2-hour window that you and other people that are represented in the box there or your own team to get together and begin plotting through that and working through it. Okay? And the reason we moved it to the afternoon is I don't think I could physically teach for 3 hours in a row and then teach for 2 more hours in a connections class without a break. So on that day, I'm going to go home and take a nap and not talk to anyone and then come back and talk for 2 more hours, which is what we'll have to do when we go to 4 and 5 services. That's just how it works.
No. Yes. All right. So here's what you'll see on the Leadership Academy. We'll do a post on the Facebook page for Leadership Academy. If you want to meet that day, there's a couple of places that things you'll have to think about. One is if you actually formally want to meet that day, you'll need to reserve a space to do that. And if you're going to, knowing who you're going to invite for your meeting, they need childcare, we'll need to know what that looks like. Because we obviously plan for, in past Connections Sundays were not Connections Sunday, they were the Connections class. And now we've moved it into being able to have info sessions for new things launching and the ability for ministry teams to come together and meet in the space we have. So if 20 of you decide to have ministry meetings, we got to think about classrooms and where you might be and over here, over there. So we'll need to have a reservation process for you to do that. But we encourage you because we want you to do it. It's a great time. If we've already got childcare here and we've got the building open and you can come and get together with a team of 2 or 3, it's a great time to do it. So we will post how that process will work. You'll see that coming up this week so you can reserve that time slot availability and needed childcare if you'll need it.
Yeah, and again, November we'll have a connection time too. And so that would be a good time to plan ahead right now for maybe the larger group coming together. Okay? November or early December.
Early December.
When we break off here in a minute, what if we are involved in several? So how's that?
If you're involved in several ministries, then I would encourage you just to talk, at least get together with that group and say, can we plan a time when we get together? Well, if I texted you, it's in that text. And I didn't get that done with everybody. And so if you don't know, come and talk to me and I'll show it to you. But part of why I texted a lot of you, I couldn't get it all done because it took hours to do, is just to look at the text, try and get together with them for 5 minutes, and then go to another group and just kind of work through it if you can, okay? All right, let me pray. I got to be done and then I'll answer questions. God, thank you for today. Thank you for this time that we had together. And I pray that as we continue to work on this, that we're productive in you, that we have your wisdom, we surrender our best ideas and our thoughts, take away anxieties and fear in all this, and just help us to enjoy it. Help us to enjoy digging through it. But I pray that you show us what we need to see, that you speak to us and reveal to us what these ministries should look like, because they're not our ministries. This is not our church. It is your church. These are your ministries. And so, God, show us what you're already doing and help us join you. And reveal that to us today as we talk and over the next few weeks as we begin to develop these things. We praise you for it all. In Jesus' name, amen.